like sunshine, like springtime, like something's in the water and I'm taking a deep dive. I'm feeling so weightless, like I'm gonna make it, and nothing in the universe can take this. I can see it clearly now, nothing gonna bring me down. I got my head held high, I'm on my way, and I'm following the signs to my happy place. I'm walking in the light of a brand new day, and I'm right where I belong, in my happy place. I got my head held high, I'm on my way, and I'm following the signs to my happy place. I'm walking in the light of a brand new day, and I'm right where I belong, in my happy place. And I'm right where I belong, in my happy place. And I'm right where I belong, in my happy place.
Welcome to the National University of Singapore Yongloo Lin School of Medicine Healthy Longevity Webinar Series, and thanks for joining us. We're going to have hear from the view of a longevity investor tonight, Sergey Young, and that's going to be exciting. But before we do that, I want to go to our initial segment talking about a recent paper in the field, and we have Shivanisha Ravintharan talking about the problems that happen when cytotoxic T cells accumulate in the aging CNS.
Thank you, Prof. Kennedy. As mentioned, my name is Shiva, and I am a research assistant in Prof. Brian Kennedy's lab. And today I'll be looking at a paper from Janice Groh et al. So previous studies have discovered that with aging, there is degeneration of certain nerve structures. In this study, they investigated the role of CD8 plus T cells, specifically in the degeneration of these nerve structures, in order to understand more about the underlying mechanisms that result in the age-related decline of the central nervous system. So CD8 plus T cells are immune cells that are part of the adaptive immune system, and they act by causing the cell death of infected cells. And in this study, they focused on the retinotactile system, which are the nerves that connect the retina to the brain. So they found that axonal spheroids increase from adult to aged mice. So these axonal spheroids are swellings with thinner and degenerated myelin sheaths. In adult mice, the myelin sheath is relatively untouched, while in aged mice, they are fragmented and redundant. By imaging, they also found that there was a reduced thickness of the inner retinal layers of aged mice as compared to adult mice, and there was also a reduction in both the behavior and cognition of aged mice. So following this, they attempted to ascertain if the damage to the nerves was due to neuroinflammation from the CD8 plus T cells. Neuroinflammation is an immune response that triggers inflammation in the brain. And what they found was that there was an increase in CD8 plus T cells in the aged mice compared to the adult mice that actually matched the increase in axonal spheroids. When the experiments were run with RAG1 deficient mice that lack mature immune cells, results showed that there was less axonal spheroid formation and less of a decrease in the thickness of retinal layers. There was also improved behavior and cognition compared to the normal aged mice. They also looked at the cell's heterogeneity between adult and aged mouse brains via single-cell transcriptomics. So what this does is measure the concentration of RNA in each individual cell and allows researchers to group the cells into various clusters based on their distinct signatures. With this, they found 9 different clusters of CD8 plus T cells in both the adult and aged mice. And specifically in cluster 1, which increased a lot, it showed an increased expression of LAG3 and PDCD1, which both are involved in activating T cells. And looking within the subsets, researchers then looked for aging-related changes in transcription of DNA to RNA. What they found was transcriptional changes of cells within cluster 2 and a large increase of cells that represent cluster 1. Via flow cytometry of CD8 plus T cells, there was an increased expression of PD-1 that was found, and also granzyme B, which is a cytotoxic effector molecule. And granzyme B in particular is essential in mediating cell death in target cells. To test if aging was directly related to CD8 plus T cells, RAG1 deficient mice were then reconstituted with bone marrow from both normal and CD8 plus deficient mice. So with bone marrow from the normal mice, the aged mice had increased levels of CD8 plus T cells, but that was not the case with bone marrow from mice lacking CD8 plus T cells. Formation of the axonal spheroids also increased after reconstitution with normal mice bone marrow. And then researchers took bone marrow from mice that were lacking granzyme B and reconstituted that into RAG1 deficient mice. And that showed a normal increase in CD8 plus T cells in aged mice, but not any more axonal spheroid formation, which indicates that the axonal degeneration is dependent on granzyme B. When mice were infected, there was enhanced CD8 plus T cell numbers, more axonal spheroid formation, and retinal thinning, indicating that these effects were dependent on CD8 plus T cells. So how does this translate to humans? Researchers compared brain autopsy samples from adult and older humans, and they found that there was an accumulation of CD3 plus CD8 plus T cells in older humans, but not any more CD3 plus CD4 plus T cells. And there was also an increase in axonal spheroids in older adults. So in summary, CD8 plus T cells cause the degeneration of axons in aged mice. The axonal degeneration is dependent on granzyme B and occur in an antigen and TCR-dependent manner. The detrimental effect that CD8 plus T cells have on aging is also further enhanced in systemic inflammation. And even in aging, CD8 plus T cells may result in axonal dysfunction. Thank you very much for your attention. It's back to Prof. Brian.
Thanks, Shiva. I knew I should have just used Shiva, but I tried to say the whole name, so that's what I get. Sorry about that. Yeah, I think that paper is really interesting because we're learning more and more about the role of the immune system in aging, and this really starts to talk about connections between defective immune function and adverse effects in neurons. So those kinds of, so expect more studies like that. I think that we're learning more and more how much damage an altered immune system can cause in aging. So Sergey Young is a longevity investor and visionary with a mission to extend healthy lifespan. He founded the Longevity Vision Fund to accelerate life extension technologies and to make longevity affordable and accessible to all. And we're going to hear his talk in just a second, but I want to mention that he has a book, The Science and Technology of Growing Young, and that's coming out very soon. You can go pre-order it on Amazon, and I'm going to do this right after the show's over, Sergey. But before that, I'm going to listen to your talk. So over to you.
Thank you, Brian. Is everything okay quality-wise?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to be with you today. I have particular love for Singapore. I spent beautiful 6 months there and enjoyed it a lot. So it's just good to be back and have an opportunity to share what I learned from my investment and scientific experience. Let me just share the slides. So the talk that I'm going to present today, it's called 7 Signs of Longevity Revolution. And by the end of this, what I want you to do is just to see the different trends and things which are happening around us, which give us the understanding that we're living in a very unique intersection of time and just a lot of scientific and technological breakthroughs which are here today will form this longevity revolution that we can enjoy and we can use. Just a sec. Yeah, before we do that, who is Sergey Young? As Brian said, I'm longevity investor. So I founded 3 years ago, it was back in 2019, I founded Longevity Vision Fund. That's $100 million fund, which supports entrepreneurs, scientists who are trying to bring affordable and accessible version of healthcare and longevity to the world. I'm also innovation board member and sponsor of Age Reversal X Prize, This is pro bono technological global competition where 400 teams all around the world will compete. We're starting in the end of this year. Will compete by bringing different intervention, pieces of science, technology, with the aim to reverse aging processes in our body, measured by a set of biomarkers, obviously. I'm also a book author. I'm in the end of my 3 years book writing journey. I really enjoy it. And it's an amazing book. We already made #1 new release on Amazon in preventive medicine category. I had an amazing opportunity to interview 40 different scientists, longevity pioneers like George, David Sinclair, Bob Langer. I even had a discussion about human avatars with Peter Jackson, creator of Lord of the Rings. So it's been very exciting. I'm very happy to share that. So let's go into longevity revolution. Sign #1 is about environment. If you listen to the news today, and I have one friend who actually calls CNN constantly negative news, you get an impression the world is falling apart. Well, I don't think it's the case in terms of environment and the changes that we're doing in our external context, which supports our longevity and health. Look at China and India. In the last decade, China and India added 10% of their forestry area on the overall territory. That's a lot. That's great. Or use of the electric buses all around the world. China has 500,000 buses on the streets, which are electric ones. And I was just looking at the news, how situation with electric buses is developing in Singapore. What I found that starting from last year, 2020, Singapore made a decision to buy only electric version of public transport, of buses as well. Congratulations, Singapore. Well done as always. Driverless cars. We do think it's just certain technological development. I do think it's development in the field of passive longevity, because if you are in driverless cars, your chances to get severe accident or die in a car accidents actually decrease 10 times. And I'm also a big fan of the healthy food and arrival of plant-based food and lab-grown meat as well. I think will give us an opportunity to live healthier, happier, and longer life. Second, in medicine, the version of medicine that we've seen in the last few decades, even centuries, is changing very rapidly. So medicine is becoming much more personalized and much more preventive. And the illustration that I always use is my wearable. Well, in my case, it's Apple Watch, but it can be Fitbit, it can be Whoop, it can be anything else. Max, is everything okay? Oh, okay, great. Yeah, I'll just see you making some gesture. Okay, so Apple Watch. We think about wearables as something which will count our steps. Well, it's not the case anymore. Our wearables becoming personalized healthcare devices. The recent version of Apple Watch, again, forgive me for using this example, and again, it can be any wearables that you like, Fitbit, Garmin, whatever, can do electrocardiogram, can actually detect when someone is falling down on the street, and can call ambulance for you. And again, I think with the addition of a couple of new features like measuring a level of glucose and measuring our blood pressure, it's going to be almost like 90% of the data that you need to gather about your health and performance of your body and mind, by the way, on a regular basis. So that's amazing. And arrival of artificial intelligence in the whole world of medicine is amazing as well. It's a great opportunity for personalization, but also for us being much more preventive about our health problems. Human alone can detect early signs of early stage cancer in 38% of cases. But then exactly the same human empowered by artificial intelligence can do it in 99% of cases. I think this is exciting. Excuse me. Okay, next one. So the next sign is actually about the new players. Think about, when you say healthcare, what kind of players are coming to your mind today? We're thinking about insurance companies, healthcare providers, big pharma. I do believe that in 10 years time from now, it's going to be completely different players. I think the change in medicine, in healthcare, in longevity will come not from old players doing new things. It will come from new players completely disrupting the healthcare space. And we can obviously discuss Google, we can discuss Amazon, Microsoft as well. I do think they're going to be one of the largest healthcare companies on earth in 10 years from now. But watch out, Apple. I think Apple has this enormous ability to rethink completely all of the industries that they are entering in. And I'm just reading, I think it was Morgan Stanley report from, I guess, last year, when they say that Apple might do 50% of its revenue from its healthcare platform by the end of this decade. Again, amazing change. Fourth, if you compare today how much money we spend today on R&D in different fields of medicine with longevity and understanding aging processes, this is really insignificant amount. And that's a problem. If you go to pharmacy today and you ask for drugs against age-related diseases or against aging, they would think you're crazy, or they would send you to cosmetic section or to buy supplements. I do think it's counterintuitive. So I think what will happen in the next 5 to 10 years, regulators all around the world will recognize aging as disease or aging as an important risk factor. And it's already been done by World Health Organization, which added a new code for old age in its disease classification system back in 2018. And I do think by recognizing aging in regulatory context, we will create sustainable economic model for inflow of not billions, but hundreds of billions of dollars from biotech, big pharma, governments, into fighting age-related diseases and aging overall. Sign number 5 is about cancer. And I always use cancer as an example of the disease and the field where significant and consistent application of our talent and funding can create change. 20 years ago, cancer was kiss of death. People were delaying their cancer screening test because if they learn they have cancer, they would vanish in a few months, right? Specifically if this is late stage cancer. Well, these days, if you manage to catch cancer through the means of early diagnostic at very early stage, your recovery rates can be up to 90 to 100%, depending on cancer type and the stage type as well. This is obviously much higher that we see numbers that we see if we're talking about stage 4 cancer. So that's again exciting. That's again why, and it's the outcome of $80 to $100 billion coming to oncology and cancer-related research and development for the last decade or so. And I do believe that fighting aging and age-related disease going to be our next cancer case. And I do believe we're right in the middle of winning the war against this disease. Sign number 6 is about economics of aging. And some people think that changing demographics is give us the optionality to respond to that or not. And I don't think it's the case. A silver tsunami is coming. And I do think that Singapore is actually one of the top countries in the world in terms of understanding this problem early and trying to influence this on so many multiple dimensions, from creating the whole city environment which supports all the living to investing in research and development in this field, to making sure that all lifestyle changes and all the environment which is created in the city for citizens is actually enabling them to live healthier and happier life. Well, that's why Singapore has, I think it's in top 5 in terms of the lifespan on Earth. average lifespan, and it's in top 2 in terms of the health span on a global scale. And again, and this might be more relevant for Singapore and Japan. This is top 2 countries health span wise, because 25% of Singaporeans will be 65 years old and above by the end of this decade. And then the other thing, and it's a final sign of longevity revolution, that it's always fascinating to see the development of different technologies. And we, through Longevity Vision Fund, is looking at these technologies as well. Quoting Aubrey de Grey, I think we more and more changing our view of the human body from simply biological one and complementing this with more engineering view of human body. I think in the next few decades, we will have more opportunity to supplement and augment ourselves. And it's going to be very organic. And I'm talking about human brain AI integration or artificial body parts, different gene editing techniques and technologies, which is currently under development as well. I'm obviously waiting for this with combination of excitement and fear. I do think there is a lot of regulatory and ethical questions that we need to solve about the world of the future. But again, just think about the implication of human brain computer integration for people who suffer from neurodegenerative diseases. I think it's going to be one of the biggest breakthroughs, which can help them to be in a healthy and again happy state in the end of their life when they suffer from dementia or Alzheimer. I wanted to share with you the framework that we use in Longevity Vision Fund when we look at different investments and different pieces of science and technology in our longevity and age-related diseases space. We call it 3 horizons of longevity innovation. Horizon 1 is about today. What we can do today, like DIY diagnostic, early cancer diagnostic, heart diagnostic, use of wearables, different software and applications, which is there. And I do think even in today's terms, it's exciting opportunity to change our health and lifestyle and add another 10, 20 healthy and happy years to our lifespan. Horizon 2 is, I do think these are all technologies which will help us to break the sound barrier of 122 year maximum lifespan on Earth in few decades from now. So this, I do believe that any breakthroughs that we will see in the next 10, 20 years in the field of gene therapy and editing, in the field of regenerative medicine, or any application of artificial intelligence, either in diagnostic, in big data, or in drug discovery, will give us an opportunity to live longer and healthier life as well. But this, this is not now. This is in the next 10 to 20 years. So we still need to stay on longevity bridge and make sure our body and our mind is in a healthy state. And then Horizon 3, this all augmented human stuff that we already discussed, this is going to be available to us in 25 to 50 years from now. I do think by this time we will sort out the ethics of how we can use it in a peaceful and complementary way to make humans better. Rather than to create this scary version of the future full of robots and artificial intelligence winning the war against human one. I also wanted, because Singapore is so pioneering nation in terms of bringing longevity and health to the benefits of all citizens. I also wanted to offer some thoughts about national longevity programs. My resolution for this year, actually to find a country that I can help and advise to implement national longevity program. And I think Singapore done the best in this field already. I'm doing a lot of work in the corporate segment. Again, this is all pro bono. Everything I do in longevity is my contribution to the world, so I'm not taking any money out of it. But I do think that making a change on a national level, on the government level, can be super exciting and very efficient as well. So why thinking about longevity on a national level is very important. So as we discussed, the paradigm of medicine is changing. We're going from reactive to proactive. We're going from one size fits all to much more personalized version of medicine. We're talking about enormous pace of technological progress, which give us an opportunity to refit and redesign the whole environment for our citizens. I do think the raising healthcare cost is a huge problem all over the world. Not sure if this is the problem for Singapore. Probably in the future. Singapore is actually very efficient in terms of its healthcare spend. Last time I checked, it was 5% of Singapore GDP spent on healthcare. And Brian can correct me if I'm wrong. US has one of the most expensive healthcare systems in the world. It's 18% of GDP spent on healthcare. And again, it's going to be more and more with average age of the nation increasing. And obviously, governments just need to react to the new demographics reality, the silver tsunami that we discussed with that. Leading countries already in the forefront of bringing longevity and fighting age reversal diseases on a government level, on a national level. Like in case of China and Finland, it is about genetic biobanks. In case of Singapore or United Arab Emirates, it is about taking the citizens' health on a national level and influencing all the aspects of healthy living, from research and medicine to healthy lifestyle. I particularly like the Singapore focus on changing the mindset of kids as well. I just printed out this beautiful brochure that you have on, I think it's Health Promotion Board of Singapore, which actually tells you how you can teach your kids to live in a healthy way. And I'm a father of 4, so I'm really embracing that. This whole components of national longevity programs we've done in huge corporations all around the world, again, all for free. And I do think specifically in the case of Singapore, there's quite a lot of success in implementing all aspects of that. Just for the sake of time, we're not going to be covering this today. And I just had a thought that Singapore can be like the first country in the world to report on a quarterly basis the longevity and health metrics of its citizens, like even the average body mass index of citizens, collecting data from wearables, and reporting how many steps, and hopefully it's 1 trillion steps. I calculated it's a challenging but achievable target for the whole citizens. And I do think just reflecting and looking at these KPIs on a national level can be pretty cool, and just give an example to the rest of the world. That's it for today in terms of my formal presentation. I'd like to stay connected with you. Go to sergeyyoung.com and you'll find a lot of amazing things there. And if you would like to dig more into details of what we're doing in Longevity Vision Fund, in Age Reversal X Prize, what is happening in the world of longevity technology and science, please pre-order the book on Amazon. Again, I'm very excited to share that. That's it.
Thanks, Sergey. That was great. I have an important question for you. If CNN is constantly negative news, what's Fox stand for?
Yeah, look, I don't have a polite version of this answer, Brian.
Yeah, the first letter F could be a problem. So how did you get into the longevity space anyway? What made you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And my own observation that in like 80% of cases, all of the people that I came across with, and this is my story as well, went through the personal wake-up call. It's significant deterioration of our own health. In this case, I had high cholesterol problem and I was forced to take statins. I didn't want to live on medication till the end of my life. So I was just looking at other alternatives. And what I discovered that we forgot this ancient traditions and some of the rules of medicine, like the food can be our medicine, right? Or our body have these amazing self-healing capabilities. Not all the time, not against all of diseases, but the aim of ourselves and the medicine is to support our body to fight the disease, not necessarily replace everything with a pill or particular intervention. And I got so excited that I thought I need to support the space with the money. I wanted to support the science and entrepreneurs who bring in the change in longevity field. Well, that's why I created Longevity Vision Fund. This is not my money. This is the money of investors who trust me to make this change in the world. And it's been exciting. We're looking at 200 companies a year. It's just enormous information flow, like the best labs, the best entrepreneurs who are thinking about how to fight age-related diseases.
How do you sort through 200 companies a year and pick the ones to invest in?
This is, yeah, look, this is the most difficult question. Well, we do have number of filters, right? So the one is this technology will be affordable and accessible to everyone? We are very keen to disrupt the cost of healthcare. And some of the companies that we invested in, like early cancer diagnostic, like Freenome, which use liquid biopsy to, well, they started with colon cancer, but obviously they have portfolio of cancers to identify, or echo imaging, which brought the similar to smartphone version of ultrasound device. They bring in the cost of healthcare for this particular problem down by 10 to 20, but not percent, times. And this is amazing. And this is before we talk about like genesis, organ regeneration space, etc. So that's kind of one thing. Second, these companies should exist in the current regulatory framework. We did discuss today about the importance of recognizing aging as a disease in regulatory terms, or as important risk factor, so we can build a sustainable economic model. Fortunately or unfortunately, we do invest in a viable biotech companies today, which exist in the current regulatory framework, but they all have to have a positive side effect on increasing human lifespan and health span.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned affordable and accessible, because a lot of people, when they hear about longevity and technological breakthroughs in that space, that they think it's going to be for rich people and further cause inequities. And so what's your take on that? I mean, certainly some technologies, organ replacement is probably going to be available to some people and not others, at least initially. So how do you try to reduce that gap instead of expand?
Yeah, well, a number of things. I actually believe, I mean, we're living in a world of divided nations, right? We increasing inequality gap, and this is really sad. I actually think this whole thing of fighting age-related diseases, of bringing technology in the space of healthcare and longevity, can be really unifying theme, right? So how do we do that? Number one, we cherry pick the companies who can disrupt the cost, right? And so that's, I mean, if you have a technology which can decrease the cost of something by a factor of 10 to 20 times, that's already a massive improvement. Number two, we're looking at much more preventive version of medicine, because the last time the studies that I've seen, cost of prevention is 10 to 20 times cheaper than cost of responding to something which is happening in your body and mind in emergency mode. So that's the second one. And third one, I do believe that the pace of technological development will democratize a lot of things. Even if, like, look at oncology drugs, like 6 out of 10 drugs in US, like the most expensive drugs, are oncology drugs anyway. But like with the end of their IP, they're going to be generic. And they're going to be available to everyone. It's a little bit like cell phones. 25 years ago, it was $10,000 a piece. It was super expensive, available only to reach. Right now, you can go from Hong Kong to Shenzhen in 14 minutes on high-speed train. You can go to Shenzhen Electronic Market and buy a version of smartphone, which is working, for $9 in US dollars terms. So that's amazing. I do think we should expect it more and more.
Yeah, that I have to say that train from Hong Kong to Shenzhen is a great breakthrough. I got tired of taking 2 sets of cars and crossing borders and switching sides with the giant. I love that train. Tell me a little bit more about the X Prize, since we haven't had anyone on the show yet that's really been involved with the X Prize. So what are your thoughts on it? Is a prize-based strategy the way to go? I mean, and what are the benefits, and are there any weaknesses of taking that approach to try to augment aging research?
Yeah. So overall, just for the benefit of our audience, XPRIZE Foundation is a foundation which runs a lot of pro bono competition. So what you do, you go to Elon Musk, this is a real story, and you say, Elon, would you contribute 15 million to the winning team, which will create something which would solve world's biggest problems? So you have 300, 400 teams competing for the same prize from usually 50 plus countries. This is the maximum that we had, trying to solve world globus problem, like coral restoration, or utilizing CO2 from the atmosphere and creating minimal viable product, or creating the first private spaceship. We actually know this today as Virgin Galactic. The outcome of the first XPRIZE competition many years ago was bought by Richard Branson. And Richard Branson created Virgin Galactic on the basis of this technology. And we just launched the largest XPRIZE with Elon Musk again for carbon removal early this year. It's $100 million prize. So what we've done, and I always had a dream to do the same pro bono competition in age reversal space. But that's like really difficult because we're talking, the cost of mistake is enormous. The cost of risk is human lives. So we end up with joining forces like with Steve Horvath. You obviously know Steve pretty well, creator one of the first aging clocks in the world, with George Church, David Sinclair, Terry Grossman as well. And the thinking process is if we can use the biological clocks and set of biological clocks, not the only one, to measure age reversal potential of any particular intervention or pieces of science or technology, which is already approved and exists in the current regulatory context, we can stimulate a lot of innovation, a lot of new minds coming into space. And let's see how it goes. So we're still in the process of raising this $100 million, but we do see a lot of interest. And funny enough, the profile of the people who would like to donate this money, it's almost the same. They are 50, 60 plus years old. They have a lot of money that they earn through building their own businesses. They all very ethical one. We do our job with making sure the source of money is like the best that we can have in the world. But what they do realize, like they want to make contribution to the world. And one of the contribution they can make is fighting age-related disease for people not to suffer from cancer, heart disease, diabetes, neurodegenerative diseases as well. So that's the story of XPRIZE. We're still raising the money, but I'm very hopeful we will announce that and we can start competition by the end of this year.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting because I think you'll have all kinds of different ideas to try for interventions to try to affect aging biomarkers. Exactly. So I know the winner may come from left field. So
yeah, sometimes that's a good point, by the way, Brian. I think in 2/3 of cases in our previous XPRIZes, the winner comes from a completely different direction with a very unconventional solution. Well, I don't know to what extent the human health can support unconventional solutions, but we hope we'll have more and more ideas and stimulate the inflow of talents, funding, and interest on all levels, government, corporations, us human beings, to that topic.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the research that went into cancer and the progress that was made because of that. And I think that it sort of touches on the same point, is that, when you look at immune therapy, which is one of the major advances in cancer treatment in the last few years, very little of that money went into immune therapy. And I think we tend to forget when we're trying to solve medical problems and disease problems that you don't know which direction the solution is going to come from. And so you have to cast a wide net. And I worry about that right now because there's kind of a movement away from funding for basic research and discovery and understanding. Yeah. And it's often those basic discoveries that lead to new thinking and novel directions. I mean, a lot of the cancer field would have said immune therapy is going to go nowhere even 10 years ago. So, and that's fine. Everybody should have their opinion, but we need to find ways to support ideas from as many areas as possible.
I agree with you, Brian. I was just over this Christmas season, I was reading the book. I think it's called 100 Cases from the History of Medicine. And in 2/3 of the cases, the solution, invention, discovery came from completely unconventional source, or sometimes as a side effect of one simple solution or the practice change or discovery in the lab. So I do embrace this. Well, as an investor, I'm all for it. We have very diversified portfolio. We have 16 companies that we invested in, and we're gonna invest more in the next few years. And I think human health is such a complex subject that if there's like one solution would exist, we would discover that in the past through means of evolution or the science or just bright human minds. So we need to work on so many things and see what will come out from it.
So you invest in 16 companies. How much do you nurture the companies? Do you put the money in and keep track, or do you take a more active role in the companies you invest?
Yeah, well, it's a very interesting question, because like our tickets in financial industry terms, I know for us, for human beings, 100 million is just a lot of money. In financial industry terms, this is peanuts, okay? So when we became one of the largest...
It's still peanuts.
Say it again?
It's a lot of peanuts, but it's still peanuts.
Yeah, it's a lot of peanuts, but for them, it's just really insignificant. So when we announced $100 million Longevity Vision Fund, we became one of the largest longevity focused fund in the world. And this is the sign of not how bright we are. This is a sign how fragile and immature and early stage this industry is. So we have pretty small tickets for the companies that we're investing in. It's $1 to $3 million, and we participating in the rounds which have 100 or $200 million of raising at the same time. So, and this is where our value comes from. What we've seen in the last 3 years, people like big pharma, biotech firms started to, or medical device producers started to recognize the value of longevity or age reversal or fighting age-related disease effect of their current portfolios. So they come to us and say, guys, we have this beautiful portfolio of drugs or inventions or patents. We always worked in the mode that it's just one disease that we need to address. And then fighting age-related disease, understanding aging process and trying to influence that in a positive way brings completely different size and magnitude of opportunity for us. So together with you, Longevity Vision Fund, and your team, we would like to discover, is there positive option value of us going this way? Is there like side effects that we can focus on to make sure we increase the value of something which exists today or which we will invent in the future? So that's, in a very simple terms, why people like us. And I was always surprised, well, people raise $200 and we like write $200 million, and we raise 1% of this ticket. Why they taking us? So that's the outcome, and that's the reason behind that.
Yeah, it seems like with technology, we create technologies to solve problems, and then the technologies sometimes create new problems that need to be solved. And
Yeah.
Industrial revolution, high fructose corn syrup, we can name a lot of those. But you seem confident that the rate of technology creation is going to stay ahead of the problems.
Oh yeah, I think it's going to accelerate. Yeah, and again, that's why I just done a TEDx talk. It's called Morality of Immortality. I'm not a fan of immortality. It's just the name for life extension or our opportunity to live longer. But the whole premise of this, we have created the science and technology to live longer, but we haven't created life, a world which supports our desire to live longer. Like in US and UK, if you look at the figures, 65 to 80% of people will reject the idea of extending their life by 10 years. Even if you put like healthy and happy years there, yeah. People just have this old paradigm of aging, right? Of extending the last 5 to 10 years of your life when you are in the most fragile state, when you requires a lot of support. So I do think we need to work not only on technology, not only on science, but also on ethics of today's world, and make sure inequality gap is decreasing, and our relationship with Mother Nature, it will be completely different, and our relationship with health as well. My main point is like, it's time, specifically after COVID, it's time to take back responsibility for our own health and be a partner to healthcare system, to the government, to your peer, to your community, rather than just silent recipient of whatever will be offered to you.
Yeah, COVID, in a way, it's very informative because it exposed so many problems and challenges that countries have, and also the international issues around countries, interacting with each other. And hopefully we can learn from that. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity to evaluate who did what and what worked and what didn't. So hopefully,
Exactly.
Yeah. So we have Max here again to take questions. You might not recognize him. He has another new hairdo, and he's dressed very conservatively for Max today. So I don't know what's wrong, but Max, you okay?
I'm very well, yeah. Well, maybe let's go a little bit to like the company and investment side of things. Andrew wants to know, when you're evaluating a company to invest in, what are like the top 5 things that you look at?
So number 1 is affordability and accessibility aspect. Number 2 is aspect of prevention. Number 3 is their IP strategy, is like how inventions and intellectual property that they're creating, can it be protected to support the economic model and their opportunity to pay back investments. Number 4, we're looking at a management team. It should be great combination of scientists and entrepreneurs. And usually it's just a lot of synergies by bringing people from academia and people with entrepreneurial background. It's produced amazing results. And number 5, because we are a pretty small fund, we're looking at validation from other external parties. So it's either partnership with big pharma or with biotech fund. So if there's certain history of working relationship, it shouldn't be necessarily like partnership agreement with the external parties, which we respect and can rely on. It's usually very helpful as well. So these are like 5 things that we're looking at.
You were currently hinting at IP, which is obviously usually very valuable. But like in the last decades, like a lot of open source actually has really fueled the digital economy. How do you think about like open source technology in the longevity space? Wouldn't it accelerate things?
Yeah, Max, I love it. I think it's a way forward. And I think, well, we did discuss today the power of Google, Amazon, and Facebook, like the big 4 or big 5, right? And I do think, I was speaking about this in the positive terms, but obviously like every positive things in our life can has a negative side effects as well. So if you want to be more balanced on these companies, I do think they do require like a balancing set of different companies, entrepreneurs, startups, people, open source technologies and apps, which would balance the power, enormous power of this huge big tech market participant. So I'm actually embracing that because I do believe the change will come not only through like Googles of this world, but the change can come from a couple of guys in the garage or working in lab for the last 3 years and bringing something really unique to the world.
That ties into like a question from Alexei. What are the best places for longevity startups to set up their headquarters and why?
Great question. Look, well, my experience is obviously not that global. So if you think about America, we really like Boston because Boston is like biotech capital of the world. You can sit down in a hotel and like the whole biotech industry and big pharma industry will be just passing by. You couldn't even like just not stand up there. The other place is like Bay Area in California. California historically has been very active in the biotech space, and obviously merger between science and tech is there as well. In terms of the Europe, well, I think it's either Berlin or UK, like a London, or being close to scientific centers there. And in terms of Asia, I mean, you guys probably know better, but obviously it can be Singapore or Hong Kong, and in the mainland China, I do think it's just a number of great cities to establish your longevity startup there as well. because it's just a lot of things happening in China. Unfortunately, because we're so focused on US, I don't have a time to spend like a quality discovery time in a period of my life going to Asia. Obviously, Singapore going to be my first destination to see what is happening there. But like, I'm very excited of what is happening in Asia. This is just amazing. Like the quality of response to demographic challenges, to even to COVID, to healthcare challenges in the countries like Singapore and Japan, and I would probably add China there as well. It's just enormous. It's an example for the whole world.
This is becoming an issue, you know, that China is thinking more and more about healthy aging, and there's more and more things happening both on the academic and the private sectors, and it's becoming harder and harder to work together because of the politics, and it's really unfortunate because I think if we could put some ideas together and co-fund some things, it would be in everybody's interest and really create this global approach to healthcare. And right now it's getting more difficult, not more easy.
I agree, Brian. Like pre-2016, you can invest both in US and China, right? After 2016, we had to make a choice. And since we US-based fund, we obviously choose US. But I think it's so unfair that even us, like Longevity Vision Fund, we're working for everyone in the world, you know, tend to be politically mindful and like, you know, prioritize certain geographies at the expense of other. I think it's collective effort.
Well, maybe a little bit on a personal note, as an author and like as a communicator, how do you actually talk to friends and family about longevity without patronizing them?
This is a very funny question. So I started with Horizon 1. Horizon 1, remember, is what you can do today. Like, and it's simple lifestyle changes. You do your checkups, you don't smoke, right? You don't take alcohol or drugs, your diet is healthy, you have your 10,000 steps and you meditate and sleep, right? Then what I found that people find it extremely boring. Like, my mom told me that, Sergey, you don't need to like patronize me. So then I created Horizon 2 and Longevity Vision Fund. So I thought, okay, I'll just excite people with an idea of look at the world of gene therapy, gene editing, organ regeneration, regenerative medicine overall, like longevity in the pill, which we will have in the 10, 20 years from now. Whether it's going to be metformin, rapamycin, or the new drug invented by artificial intelligence, I don't know yet. We need to discover that. We need to go through human trial. We need to go through approval, etc. So then people started to be like more interested. It's like, oh, Sergey, well, this is interesting. Do you think we can then break this 120 or 122 years a maximum lifespan barrier one day? And I said, why not? It's just fundamental change in technologies and science, which can probably bring us to that. So I started to receive more interest, but it was still not enough. So I created this third horizon, human avatars, Internet of body, like we full of sensors, human brain AI integration, replaceable organs, like, and we can live to 200 years if we want, probably by the end of this decade. And then people started to be shocked and interested. But this whole invention of like third horizon and us living to 200 years is the only communication trick for me to get the attention from people to change something today and live healthy way and not to compromise and make right, longevity choices. So in a way, this is my communication tactics, but it does open up a lot of thinking, like, my biggest thoughts about the future is again, as I said, is less about science and technology. We will sort it out collectively all over the world, but about the ethics of the future. And this is my biggest worry, because I want to live in a beautiful world with my 4 kids, and rather than being scared and not in a good relationship with society and Mother Nature.
Yeah, I would agree. I think this maximum lifespan argument is a little bit spurious. I think it will be possible to get past maximum lifespan. The one thing that is an interesting debate to me, though, is whether the current technologies that we're beginning to test will do that. They may actually extend health span without crossing that maximum lifespan barrier. But some of the more radical technologies coming down the path may, and I don't think we know which ones yet, but I'm pretty confident some of them will break that maximum lifespan barrier down.
Yeah, I agree with you, Brian. I think fundamentally, if you look at Horizon 2, it's like gene editing might give us this opportunity if we influence longevity genes, and then like organ regeneration might give an opportunity. But I'm always telling people, like, whomever promised you to live 120 or like 200 years, it's completely irresponsible promise, because like I'm 49 years old. For me to check if I can live to 150, just another century. Like, who will hold me accountable for what will happen in 100 years from now? It's going to be like completely different version of the world. So in a way, this whole inflation of like, we're going to live 150, we're going to live 200, we're going to live 300 years. Like, well, let's just sort out what we can sort out today.
I agree.
Science and technology, the ethics of this world, bring affordability and accessibility aspect. And then how long we will live, it depends on the quality of our life and our knowledge and discoveries.
Max?
So, Sergey, you are currently like painting this very futuristic outlook, which is like very based in the fundamental of sciences, right? And like you mentioned, there's like the ethics component of it. And so how do we change the perception of aging on the ethics and spiritual component? Do we have to bring like the church into the mix? Or like other organizations that are like more like the opposite of science? Or how do you think about approaching that?
This is the most difficult question that I have. And I do think, like, if we call us longevity industry for the sake of this word, for good or for bad, we've done very bad job with communicating this to the public, like personally. So people don't really like the idea of longevity. They think it's just extension of very bad years of their life. That's one. My second thought is, I do think, so if you want to make a change, you have 3 levels. You can make a change on individual basis. But like me, I'm very lazy as a kind of human being, right? So like whatever changes I do in my lifestyle, it's still subject to my own discipline. Then you can work with corporations and you can work on the government level. So I'm very optimistic of involving governments in this dialogue. And it's obviously a combination of carrot and stick, right? The carrot is just increase of GDP, involvement of different age cohorts in the productive workforce. And the stick is this silver tsunami thing that we need to respond to. Substantially, exponentially increasing healthcare cost. If you look at demographics of that, decrease in reproduction rates as well. It's another demographic challenge. So I'm very hopeful that we will be able to involve more governments there because we do need to have certain hierarchies, certain systems to address this problem. And I also wanted to pick on this kind of church argument or idea. So I'm not sure if this should be like spiritual or religious. But I do know that people with a mission, people with sense of purpose tend to live longer, healthier, and happier lives. So I do think one of the components of our mutual desire to live longer should be us rediscovering ourselves, creating sense of purpose, sharing the best of us with the world, helping people around. And well, this will bring just more years to your life. And more importantly, this will bring quality to these years as well.
Great. Well, I think maybe that's a good way to stop, Sergey. Thanks a lot for doing this. We'll have to get you back sometime and get an update. Thanks, Max. Our speaker next week is Christopher Chen. We're going to stay local. He's here in the US and he's heading a Singer clinical trial, which is a trial very similar to the famous Finger trial in Finland. So check in and hear more about that. You can use the panelists and all attendees button tonight to make comments about the show. Please remember to come back next week. And we're going to leave you with a video. You know, we think a lot about the challenges that the current population over the age of 65 present, but there's some new challenges that are going to come when younger people begin to get old, and we'll hear about those next.
I love old people, man. I always hang out with old people. Old people now still have stories. You ever sit with an old person and look at their photos? Every photo's got a story. What's this, Grandma? Here is a picture of your great-grandfather standing beside Charles Lindbergh before he flew across the Atlantic. First ever transatlantic flight in history. That's an amazing story. Can you imagine listening to the stories of old people's photos 50 years from now? How terrible that experience is going to be? What's this, Grandma? Here is a picture of my breakfast. What? What a breakfast. Here is a picture of your great-grandmother staring at herself in the bathroom mirror. And here are 12 more of that exact same photo. Look!
I'm feeling like sunshine, like springtime, like something's in the water and I'm taking a deep dive. I'm feeling so weightless, like I'm gonna make it, and nothing in the universe can take this. I can see it clearly now, nothing gonna bring me down.